Be me, 24, woman. I went on what might be the most ridiculous first date of my life, and I'm still trying to process whether I was being shallow or whether I had every right to feel insulted. I live in a decent city, and I've been on the dating apps for long enough to know most guys are walking red flags. You know the type. What's up messages, gin selfies, bios that say not looking for anything serious while expecting you to mother them. So when this one guy, let's call him Alex, matched with me, I was cautiously optimistic. He wasn't hot in the Instagram model way, but he was cute. His messages were actually thoughtful. He asked questions. He remembered that I said I hate pineapple on pizza and brought it up days later like, so that's a deal breaker then. Playful, but not creepy. So when he asked if I wanted to meet up, I said yes. He suggested something casual. I figured, fine. I'm not high maintenance. I was picturing maybe a cozy cafe with string lights, or one of those little hole-in-the-wall noodle places. Casual can still be cute, right? Fast forward to date night. I spent an hour getting ready. Foundation, eyeliner, the good perfume. I even wore this red wrap dress that makes me feel like I'm in charge of my own rom-com. I show up at the meeting spot he texts me, and it's McDonald's. Like literal golden arches, drive-through menu, families with kids running around in Happy Meal chaos. At first I thought maybe he was joking. Like, let's meet here and then head somewhere else, but nope. He walks up smiling nervously, says hi, and gestures inside like this is our destination. I swear I felt my soul leave my body. I tried to play it cool because I didn't want to be that girl who throws a fit. But inside, I was seething. I kept thinking, really? You ask a woman out and bring her to McDonald's? On a first date? I mean, I've got standards. My time is valuable. It's not about needing fine dining or champagne, but can you at least make an effort? McDonald's isn't casual, it's careless. We ordered at the counter. He asked if I wanted to split a large fry like it was some quirky romantic gesture. I laughed politely, but I was dying inside. I ended up with a Coke and nuggets, and we sat in one of those sticky booths that smells vaguely like mop water. He tried to make conversation, I'll give him that. He asked about my job, my dog, the book I said I was reading in my profile. But honestly, the whole time I was distracted by the setting. Every time I glanced at the greasy paper bag on the table, I felt smaller, like this was all I was worth to him. And I kept thinking, if this is his idea of effort, what's the rest of him going to be like? So there I am, sitting in a plastic booth at McDonald's in a dress I picked specifically because it looks good in dim lighting. Except there was no dim lighting. Just the harsh fluorescent buzz overhead and a kid screaming because his ice cream cone fell on the floor. Romantic. Alex, bless his heart, was really trying. He was talking about his job, something in logistics, I think, but I couldn't focus. I just kept staring at the ketchup packets, wondering how the hell I'd ended up there. I texted my friend under the table, girl. He brought me to McDonald's. She immediately replied, abort mission. Pretend your cat is sick. And honestly, I was tempted. But I also felt this weird guilt creeping in, because he wasn't being a jerk. He wasn't mansplaining or making gross comments. He was just nervous. Like fiddling with the napkins nervous. Which almost made it worse, because it meant this wasn't a joke or a test. This was him genuinely thinking this was okay. Finally, I couldn't keep it in anymore. I put down my nugget, looked him straight in the eye, and asked, so why here? I tried to keep my tone light, like I was just curious, but I'm sure my face betrayed me. He paused mid-sip of his soda, cheeks going a little red. Well, it's casual, right? I figured no pressure. I gave a polite laugh, but inside I was like, casual is a taco truck, casual is a dive bar with good music, casual is literally anywhere but this. The silence stretched. He must have seen my disappointment, because he started stumbling over his words trying to explain. I know it's not fancy, but I thought, like, sometimes simple is nice? I didn't want it to be intimidating, you know? I wanted to scream. Not intimidating? Dude, this isn't unintimidating, it's underwhelming. I nodded, but I couldn't stop myself. I mean, McDonald's is kind of unexpected. That was my diplomatic way of saying beneath me. He chuckled nervously, like he was trying to keep the mood alive. Unexpected can be good, right? I forced a smile. Sometimes. But here's the thing. As much as I wanted to just roll my eyes and check out, I could feel his energy shift. His hands were clasped tighter on the table, his voice softer, like he was hiding something. And I had this creeping sense that there was more to the story. And then he said it. Quietly, almost ashamed. I really wanted to take you somewhere better. I just couldn't afford it this time. It wasn't some slick line. His voice cracked a little. He wasn't trying to guilt me either. He looked almost embarrassed, like it physically hurt him to admit it. He started talking faster. Like once the door was open, it all came spilling out. I had like $60 left after rent and bills this week. I thought about canceling, but then I figured, what if you don't give me another chance? I wanted to see you. So this was all I could make work. And just like that, my irritation tangled with something else. Guilt, maybe? Empathy? I wasn't sure. I stared at my Coke, suddenly hyper-aware of how cheap everything looked spread across the table. The paper cups, the grease stains on the tray, and his face, red from nerves, eyes darting like he was waiting for me to laugh at him. I didn't laugh. I didn't even know what to say. Because here's the thing. I know dating isn't easy for women, but I also realized in that moment it can be brutal for men too, just in a different way. The expectation to always pay, to impress, to perform. The way money, or lack of it, sits like this invisible scorecard between you. For a split second, I softened. I thought about how vulnerable it must have felt for him to say that. How hard it probably was to admit he wasn't financially stable. And part of me wanted to reach across the table, tell him it was okay, that I understood. But another part of me, a louder part, was screaming. This is not my problem. Because yeah, life is unfair. Yes, capitalism sucks. But it's not my job to lower my standards because someone else is struggling. I spend time and money to look good for dates. I've worked hard to get where I am. Should I really have to settle for soggy fries and a guy who can't afford more than 6 nuggets? I could feel the empathy and the resentment battling inside me. My heart said, he tried. He cares. My brain said, and yet, here you are in a McDonald's dress rehearsal for a relationship where you'll always be understanding while he struggles to catch up. I smiled at him, gentle but guarded. I appreciate you telling me that, I said, and I meant it. But even as I said it, I knew how the night would end. I told him I needed to leave early, something about an early morning, a vague excuse. He smiled politely, said he understood, but I could see the disappointment flicker across his face, the kind that sinks into someone when they realize they didn't measure up. Walking out into the night air, I felt conflicted. On one hand, I wanted to pat myself on the back for dodging a situation that clearly wasn't going to work. I deserve more than a man who thinks effort is scraping together change for a burger and calling it romance. On the other hand, I couldn't shake the look on his face when he admitted he just wanted to see me, even if it meant sitting in that booth, under fluorescent lights. It wasn't cheapness, not really. It was effort in disguise. Just not the kind of effort I value. And maybe that makes me shallow. Or maybe it makes me someone who knows what she wants. I've been on too many dates where I compromise, where I give men credit for trying while I lower my expectations again and again. I promised myself I wouldn't do that anymore. So no, I didn't text him back. No second date. I told myself I was being fair, to him and to me. Because if I'd said yes, it would have been out of pity, and that's no foundation for anything. But I keep replaying it in my head. The way he looked at me, the way his voice cracked, how he probably spent the last of his cash just to sit across from me that night. It didn't change my decision, but it left a mark. For the first time, I caught myself thinking, men have their own quiet struggles too. Struggles we don't always notice, because we're so focused on how they fail us. And maybe that's the real lesson of this date. Not that I should lower my standards, not that McDonald's was secretly charming, but that effort doesn't always look the same to everyone. Still, it wasn't enough. I walked away knowing I deserved better. But I also walked away with the uncomfortable realization that sometimes better is about money. And that doesn't feel great to admit. So yeah, that was my cheap date. And honestly, I'm not sure if I was the villain or the victim. Maybe both. Be you. Watch Green Tech Stories every night. Forget to subscribe. Missing out on tomorrow's story.